It all began on a sweltering summer morning in 1983. The town of Elridge was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Mara woke up to the familiar sound of Daniel's footsteps leaving for work, the aroma of his coffee drifting from the kitchen. But that day, something felt off. There was no goodbye kiss, no wave from the porch, no chatter about the day ahead. She told herself it was nothing, just a busy morning. But by the time the sun reached its peak, a gnawing sense of unease had settled deep in her chest. By midday, Daniel still hadn't returned. Mara called his office, thinking maybe he had a meeting or got caught up in traffic. No one had seen him. Panic started to creep in as she retraced the routes he usually took to work, checked his favorite haunts, even stopped by friends' houses. But Daniel had vanished. His car was still parked in the driveway, doors unlocked, keys in the ignition, as if he had just stepped out for a moment and vanished into thin air. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence that he had been taken, nothing to indicate what had happened. The local police were summoned, and their investigation began, but it quickly hit dead ends. Neighbors hadn't noticed anything unusual. There were no witnesses, no suspicious activity, no footprints leading away from the house. The police questioned everyone, co-workers, friends, even distant relatives, but no one could provide a single clue. It was as though Daniel had been erased from existence. Mara felt the weight of disbelief settling over her. People tried to offer comfort, but there was a haunting emptiness in their words. As days turned into weeks, rumors began to circulate. Some whispered that Daniel had run away, leaving Mara behind. Others suggested a tragic accident, though nothing supported it. Mara, however, couldn't accept any of these explanations. She knew Daniel, his loyalty, his routine, his sense of humor, and none of it fit with the idea that he could simply vanish. Every corner of their home seemed to echo his absence. The empty coat rack, the silence in the kitchen, the unmade bed that had been his. The absence of any tangible answers was like a weight pressing on her chest, suffocating and relentless. At night, Mara would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining all the possible horrors that could have befallen him. She wondered if someone had been watching, waiting, planning, if some shadowy force had intervened in their seemingly normal lives. Each creak of the floorboards, each rustle outside the window, set her heart racing. Elridge was a quiet town, but now it felt alien, threatening, as if it had conspired to swallow Daniel whole. That summer, the world Mara had known, a world where she and Daniel were safe, crumbled into a mystery so deep, so terrifying, that no one in Elridge could have predicted what was about to unfold. The first few months after Daniel's disappearance were a blur of frantic calls, sleepless nights, and endless searching. Mara retraced every step he had ever taken, spoke to anyone who might have seen him, and combed through every inch of Elridge. But the town, usually so familiar and comforting, seemed to shift into a place of shadows and uncertainty. Friends tried to help, offering sympathetic words and small comforts, but even their faces began to feel distant, blurred by Mara's growing obsession with finding Daniel. Every unanswered phone call and empty lead became a hammer striking her heart, each one driving home the terrifying reality that he might never return. As the years wore on, Mara found herself trapped in a limbo of hope and despair. Holidays, birthdays, even ordinary mornings became hollow rituals, reminders of the life that had been stolen from her. People told her to move on, to accept that Daniel was gone, but her heart refused to surrender. She clung to memories, his laugh echoing through the kitchen, the way he would hum a tune while cooking, the warmth of his hand in hers on quiet evenings. These fragments of the past became her lifeline, yet they also deepened the ache of absence, making the silence around her even more unbearable. Every now and then, strange occurrences punctuated the monotony of her grief. Doors she was certain she had locked were sometimes found slightly ajar. Shadows seemed to flicker where no one should be. And sometimes, late at night, she thought she could hear the faintest whisper of Daniel's voice, calling her name through the darkness. At first, she convinced herself it was her imagination, a cruel trick of hope clinging to despair. But as the months stretched into years, these fleeting moments grew more persistent, more deliberate, and Mara began to feel that the world around her held secrets she was desperate to uncover. The town of Elridge itself seemed to change as Daniel remained missing. Once welcoming neighbors became uneasy, whispers filled the air like an unshakable fog. Mara started noticing strange faces in the crowd, unfamiliar eyes watching her as she walked the streets alone. Some townsfolk avoided her entirely, while others offered cryptic warnings, hinting at things she could not yet understand. It was as if Daniel's disappearance had awakened something hidden in the town, something that had always been there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Even outside the town, leads went nowhere. Mara followed up on tips from strangers claiming to have seen Daniel, sometimes in distant states, sometimes on grainy photographs. But each trail ended in disappointment. Letters arrived occasionally from unknown sources, some containing bizarre, fragmented details about Daniel's life after his disappearance, none ever confirming where he was or why he had vanished. Each dead end drove Mara deeper into obsession, her mind spiraling between hope and terror. The silence of 12 years became a haunting presence in itself, a weight pressing down on her every thought, every breath, every day. 12 years had passed since Daniel vanished, and Mara had learned to live with the empty spaces in her life. But she had never stopped searching, never stopped hoping. Then, on a grey, overcast morning, the unexpected happened. A small, unmarked package appeared on her doorstep. No return address. No indication of who had sent it. Mara froze, staring at the brown paper and twine as though it might vanish if she looked away. Her hands trembled as she lifted it from the porch, the weight of it unnervingly familiar, yet inexplicably heavy, like it carried more than just paper and tape. It carried a secret she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Inside, wrapped in crinkled newspaper, was a dusty cassette tape. On its surface, in faint, almost hesitant handwriting, were the words, "Play me, Mara." The simplicity of the message sent a chill down her spine. It was unmistakable. Daniel had always had a playful streak, leaving notes and messages in unexpected places to make her smile. But this was different. This was urgent, almost pleading. The tape felt like a whisper from another world, a lifeline thrown across the abyss of 12 lost years, daring her to reach out and discover the truth. Mara's mind raced with questions. Who could have sent it? How had they known exactly where to find her? And most importantly, was Daniel still alive? Every rational thought was drowned by the pulsing hope and terror rising in her chest. She imagined Daniel, somewhere, listening and hoping that she would receive the tape, that she would follow the instructions carefully. And yet, a small, insidious voice in the back of her mind warned her. What if this was a trap? What if the person who sent it wanted her to uncover something dangerous, something she wasn't ready for? That night, Mara sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the tape player on the coffee table in front of her. The glow of the lamp cast long shadows across the walls, flickering like the pulse of the secret she held in her hands. Her fingers hovered over the buttons, trembling with anticipation and fear. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards, as though the house itself were holding its breath. Finally, with a deep, shuddering exhale, she pressed play. At first, there was only static, long, harsh, white noise that made her ears ache. And then, through the crackle, came a voice she had dreamed of every night for 12 years. Daniel's voice. Clear, unmistakable, yet different, as if time had carved something into it that Mara could barely recognize. Mara, if you're hearing this, I'm in danger. They took me. They've kept me. I can't tell you where, but follow the signs. Her heart raced so violently she thought it might burst from her chest. Daniel was alive, but the urgency, the fear in his voice, told her that his freedom was still just out of reach, that the nightmare was far from over. As the tape crackled to life, Mara felt a shiver run down her spine, the kind that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching longer along the walls, as though they, too, were leaning in to listen. The static hummed in her ears, a white noise that made her pulse race, until finally, a voice emerged through the crackle, a voice she had longed to hear for 12 unbearable years. It was Daniel. But it wasn't the Daniel she remembered. His tone was sharp, urgent, tinged with fear, like a man who had seen too much and carried secrets too heavy to speak aloud. Mara, he began, each syllable deliberate, hesitant, as if speaking were a risk in itself. If you're hearing this, listen carefully. I'm in danger. I don't know how long I have. The words hit her like a hammer. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her hands gripped the edge of the table as memories of Daniel, his laugh, his touch, the life they had shared, flooded her mind, blending with terror. Who had taken him? Why now, after 12 years? And most importantly, what had he endured all this time? The questions swirled, urgent and unrelenting, but the tape offered no answers, only more clues. As the voice continued, Daniel's message became fragmented, each phrase more cryptic than the last. He spoke of them, shadowy figures who had kept him hidden, people who had eyes everywhere and knew more about him than anyone should. He referenced locations and moments only Mara would understand. Inside jokes, secret spots, hidden trails from their past. Places that were markers, guiding her towards something she couldn't yet see. Each clue felt like a breadcrumb in a maze, a map leading her deeper into a world that had been concealed for over a decade. The tape's voice sent a physical jolt through her every few seconds, the fear tangible, almost suffocating. Mara's mind raced as she tried to reconcile the Daniel she loved with the man speaking from the tape. Weak but unbroken, terrified but determined. There was a subtle urgency in the pauses, a warning in the inflections, that made her realize this was no ordinary message. Someone, or something, had orchestrated this disappearance, and Daniel had somehow found a way to reach her without alerting them. The realization sent a chill through her veins. If he had been able to survive, maybe she could follow the trail he had left for her. By the end of the tape, Mara was trembling. Her living room, once her sanctuary, now felt like the threshold to a world of secrets she wasn't prepared for. The voice faded into static once more, leaving her in oppressive silence, punctuated only by her ragged breathing and the pounding of her heart. The message was clear: Daniel was alive, but he was in danger, and the only way to save him, or even find him, was to follow the trail he had painstakingly left behind. Mara knew, in that moment, that her life, and the life of the man she loved, was about to be forever changed. The next morning, Mara couldn't sleep. The tape's message echoed relentlessly in her mind, each word from Daniel carving a path she couldn't ignore. She gathered her courage and began retracing the steps he had mentioned, starting with places only the two of them knew, places that had once been innocent and comforting, now suddenly charged with a sense of foreboding. The first stop was an old, forgotten park on the outskirts of Elridge, a place where they had shared long summer evenings. As she walked along the overgrown paths, she noticed markings, scratches on the bark of trees, a small stack of stones carefully arranged, which seemed deliberate, almost like someone was guiding her silently, pointing her toward the next step. From the park, the clues led her to a diner they used to frequent, a place filled with faded memories and the faint scent of burnt coffee and pies. Mara scanned the worn floorboards, the corners of the booths, every inch of the place. It was there, tucked beneath a chipped corner table, that she found a small envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a photograph of Daniel, taken years after his disappearance, standing in front of a building she didn't recognize. Written on the back in hurried handwriting were the words, "The road beneath the tracks. Midnight. Alone." The cryptic instructions sent a shiver down her spine. Someone had been waiting for her to notice, to follow. But who? Every new clue was a mixture of terror and hope. Mara felt like she was being drawn into a shadow world, one she had never known existed. Hidden trails behind abandoned houses, forgotten tunnels beneath the streets, and overgrown hiking paths seemed to appear specifically for her journey. Each location carried a fragment of Daniel's life in captivity, a worn shoe, a scrap of cloth, a faint imprint of a hand on a wall. It was as if he had left a trail of breadcrumbs, desperate for her to find him, each piece revealing more about the mysterious organization or force that had kept him hidden all these years. With every step, the tension escalated. Mara's heart raced not just from fear, but from a strange thrill, a mixture of adrenaline and determination. She felt eyes on her at times, shadows moving in ways that seemed impossible, as if someone, or something, was monitoring her progress. The town of Elridge, once familiar and comforting, now felt alive with secrets, watching her every move. The more she uncovered, the more she realized Daniel's disappearance was not random. It was calculated, orchestrated with precision, and someone powerful was orchestrating the game. As the hours stretched into days, Mara's journey became more dangerous and surreal. Some clues led her to places filled with physical hazards, rusted staircases, decaying bridges, and hidden basements that threatened collapse at every step. Others were psychological traps, designed to confuse, to test her resolve, or perhaps to wear her down. Yet through it all, she pressed forward, fueled by the sound of Daniel's voice in her mind, the hope that each step would bring her closer to him. Every clue was a whisper from the past, a lifeline connecting her to the man she had loved, vanished yet somehow guiding her through a maze of mystery and danger. Mara's journey led her back to Elridge, but the town she once knew felt different, haunted even. Streets that had seemed safe now twisted under her gaze, alleys looked darker, and the familiar houses felt like silent witnesses to secrets they would never reveal. Every step brought her closer to the edges of the town that Daniel had always warned her about, abandoned factories with broken windows, overgrown train tracks that had long been forgotten, and streets where the shadows lingered unnaturally long. Mara felt a growing unease, a constant sensation that someone, or something, was tracking her every move, waiting for her to falter. The first stop was the old train tracks, a place Daniel had often brought her to watch the sunset. The tracks were overrun with weeds, the metal rusted and groaning under the wind. Mara walked carefully along the path, following subtle markers, a bent piece of metal, a carved symbol on a tree, left there for her to find. Each clue seemed deliberate, calculated, guiding her deeper into a part of Elridge that most people never ventured near. The thrill of hope battled with her fear, every sound making her jump, every shadow hinting at unseen watchers. She realized that Daniel had left these clues not just to guide her, but to test her, to see if she had the courage to follow him into danger. As she continued, Mara reached an abandoned factory, its large doors hanging on broken hinges, the interior filled with rusted machinery and the stench of decay. It was here that the trail grew even more unnerving. Small scraps of paper, symbols, and worn objects littered the floor, each piece of evidence pointing toward a hidden entrance at the back. Mara's pulse quickened. The air felt heavier, charged, as if warning her to turn back. But she couldn't. Each step drew her closer to Daniel, and each heartbeat screamed that she was on the verge of uncovering a secret that had been buried for 12 long years. The closer Mara got to the heart of the town's forgotten underbelly, the more surreal her journey became. Doors appeared where there shouldn't be any, faint whispers echoed in empty corridors, and cold drafts seemed to breathe across her neck. It was as if the town itself was alive, guiding her forward while trying to test her resolve. Each step brought the memories of Daniel flooding back, the times they had laughed together, the quiet evenings in the house, the gentle strength he had always shown. Those memories propelled her through fear, keeping her steady as she navigated the dangers and mysteries laid out before her. Finally, Mara arrived at the location hinted at in the last tape clue, a small, unassuming alley, dark and narrow, with a door hidden behind rusted metal sheets. The door was unremarkable to anyone else, but to Mara, it bore significance, the final marker in a trail of years of absence, fear, and hope. Her hands shook as she traced the outline of the door, realizing that Daniel had led her here intentionally. Every danger she had faced, every clue she had followed, had culminated in this one point. The weight of the moment pressed on her chest, an intoxicating mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination, as she prepared to cross the threshold into the unknown and confront whatever lay beyond. When Mara pushed open the hidden door, the air inside hit her like a cold wave, heavy with dust, rust, and something unnameable, something that made her skin crawl. The room was dimly lit, narrow, and filled with remnants of a world she had never imagined. Papers and photographs littered the floor, some stacked neatly, others scattered as if in a hurry, while old filing cabinets lined the walls, their drawers left half open. The space smelled of mildew and secrets, of years spent hidden away from sunlight and truth. Mara's heart pounded, and every instinct screamed that Daniel was close. Yet the scene before her promised more than just a reunion. It promised answers that might change everything she thought she knew about his disappearance. Then she saw him, Daniel, emerging from the shadows, thin, disheveled, but very much alive. His eyes widened as they locked with hers, and for a brief moment, the 12 years of fear, pain, and uncertainty fell away. But relief quickly gave way to a deeper, more unsettling fear. He wasn't alone in his knowledge, and the room around him suggested a reality far more sinister than Mara could have imagined. Files detailing disappearances, maps of towns, surveillance photographs, and even cryptic notations marked the walls. Someone, or some organization, had been tracking people like Daniel for years. His disappearance had never been random. It had been part of a meticulous, calculated operation. Daniel's voice was strained, breaking with exhaustion and emotion as he tried to explain. They've been watching, Mara. Keeping me here, studying me, tracking anyone who might find out. He gestured weakly to the files and photographs. I don't know why, but they've done this before. So many people, gone without a trace. I was just another target until they realized I might know too much. Mara's blood ran cold as she glanced over the documents. Faces she didn't recognize stared back at her from photographs, names scribbled in tight handwriting. These weren't random victims. They were carefully chosen, and Daniel had become part of something far darker than either of them could have imagined. The room itself seemed to press in on her, walls closing tighter as the reality sank in. Each document, each photograph, each note pointed to a chilling truth. Daniel had been a prisoner of a hidden network, one operating in plain sight but beyond the reach of ordinary law. The tapes, the cryptic clues, even the risks Mara had taken, all had been orchestrated by this organization, their shadowy hands guiding the events from afar. Mara realized the terrifying scope of what she was confronting. Daniel's survival had required cunning, patience, and secrets within secrets. But the deeper she looked, the more questions arose. Who were these people? How had they stayed hidden for so long? And why had Daniel been taken in the first place? Despite the fear, a strange clarity settled over Mara. The puzzle pieces of the past 12 years were beginning to fit together, revealing a network of control, surveillance, and manipulation she could hardly comprehend. Daniel's ordeal was not random. It was systematic, targeted, and relentless. Yet within the terror lay a fragile hope. He was alive, he had reached out, and she had followed the trail he had painstakingly left. But the room whispered warnings she could not ignore, as if the very walls carried the voices of those who had vanished before him. Mara knew that uncovering the truth would demand courage, cunning, and unwavering resolve. For the darkness she now faced was far from finished, and its reach was longer and deadlier than either of them could have imagined. Mara stared at Daniel, alive at last, yet changed in ways she could never have imagined. The room was filled with secrets, shadows, and questions that had no easy answers. For 12 long years, the world had pretended he was gone, but now the truth had clawed its way into the light. The tapes, the clues, the hidden paths, they had all led her here, but Mara realized this was only the beginning. Outside, the night pressed against the walls of the hidden room, as if the town itself held its breath, waiting. Someone, or something, had orchestrated every moment of Daniel's disappearance, and while he was free from their physical grasp, Mara knew they were still out there, watching, waiting for the next move. The air was thick with danger, and the shadows seemed to whisper, the story wasn't over. Mara reached for Daniel's hand, and in that simple act, she felt a fragile spark of hope. 12 years of silence, fear, and uncertainty had not destroyed them. But the files, the photographs, and the cryptic notes reminded her that freedom came with a cost. The darkness that had taken him was still out there, patient, meticulous, and deadly. And as Mara stepped into the night with Daniel by her side, a single thought ran through her mind. Some secrets are buried for a reason, and some mysteries never truly end. The tape had brought him back, but the shadows of the past had only just begun to move.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.